Hi, welcome to this podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and with me, of course, is Sean Wellham and Tom Spitali. And we are always keeping our eye out for what's going on in the news. And then we use our strategic marketing lens to say, what is really going on here? And what caught our eye recently was EV, electric vehicles. Their sales are slower than expected. And they're growing, but at a much slower rate. And so it got us thinking about, a lot of times you probably might be in the same situation where you're trying to launch a new platform or create a new market. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned in this. So I'm going to hand this over to Sean because he has a really good example to talk about here.
Yeah, the first thing when I heard about this, I mean, for context, about 8% of new cars are electric these days. And it's both grown quicker than expected. Go back a couple of years, and all the talk was about how quickly it was ramping up ahead of expectations. And of course, now the rate of growth, still growing, but the rate of growth, as you say, Mary, is slowing. And there's a lot of issues to unpack. But the one thing that occurred to me, speaking with some friends of mine that are potentially in the market for new vehicles, is this idea of the infrastructure being in place to support the vehicles. That's both in terms of charging points, the time it takes to charge, a little bit of uncertainty around that, and so on and so forth. And it did remind me of, back in my banking and finance days, we tried to launch a new credit card aimed at motorists. It was like a fuel card. And the bottom line was that I should put a context, we had lots and lots of representation within the automotive industry, the division that I worked for. And we thought this would be a great add-on to provide a fuel card for drivers to use in their vehicles. But we couldn't find retailers who would accept the card unless we had a ton of people with the card ready to spend, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't find any large corporates to take the card unless it was accepted in lots of gas stations. So you're in this like catch-22 where you can't actually get the thing moving because you've got to have both at the same time. And it reminded me a little bit of EVs. And this is just one dimension. I don't think it's the entire issue. But as the infrastructure has yet to really catch up to make everyone feel comfortable that they're going to have the charging points they need that are going to be vacant and ready to use, then that will add to the headwind of people making the transition. So governments through subsidy have to invest in replacing the gas station in every town, right? But now you're going to have charging points in every town. And that's something I think that's part of it. But I think there's a multitude. That's the one example I wanted to share. But as we carry on with this conversation, I'm sure there's a ton of other headwinds to why EV market is potentially slowing down. But that was one that I thought.
Though, Sean, what was the punchline of that, though? How did it finally kind of
doesn't end well? I wish at this point I want to be able to sort of say, and then we had this stroke of genius. But what happened? We said, you know what, forget this, and the project just died. We made an acquisition. That was the solution. We acquired a company that already had a footprint and had some drivers with the view of ramping it up. We were going to come in as a new product, and we did the classic, let's just buy someone, don't make it, buy it. So we made an acquisition and bought a card issuer that we then branded ourselves. So yeah, we didn't find a smart way out of it. We just got the checkbook out, basically.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's nice when you can do that, Tom.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm reminded of a couple of things. One is the Gartner Hype Cycle that we've all been paying a bit of attention to lately, which is really kind of cool when you see the Gartner Hype Cycle. Look it up on your browser. It's this idea that innovations go through a period of extreme popularity that seems to be ahead of its time, and then reality sets in, and they have this thing called on the curve called the trough of disillusionment. Whereas maybe that's where we're at with EVs right now. I mean, where people just start to say, well, it's a new innovation. It's not as good as, and from a convenience or price standpoint as what's out there. And some people make the mistake of saying it never will be. And we all know that, eventually, these concepts improve and improve and improve. until they finally, I forget what the final curve is, but that what they call that final curve, but it eventually happens. And of course, smart companies are looking at that and trying to time their investments if they're involved in that industry, and trying to maybe get ahead of that final curve where things just really ramp up. And with EVs, it's coming. But the reason I think we're probably in the trough of disillusionment is, and I think it's related to Sean's comments about his friends. I mean, you've got these very practical concerns right now. It's just you want to, as a consumer, who might be environmentally conscious, for example, you want to participate in this, right? You want to stop polluting the environment. But when you look at the reality of how much inconvenience and cost is maybe involved at this point, you go, well, I'll wait a little bit. And we found that out with a hotel chain. I don't know, it was about 7 or 8 years ago. We were working with an unnamed but very famous hotel chain who really wanted to do some environmentally friendly things in their rooms, things that would cause inconvenience and a little bit higher cost. And they found out that no matter how environmentally conscious you are, once you have to reach into your wallet or do some things that cost you time, you might not be as environmentally conscious as you thought you were in the first place, or that you want to admit. So I think we're probably in that zone with EVs, but make no mistake, these things are coming. This is, we're going to get there. It's just it's taken a little longer than I guess people first thought.
Yeah, my previous life was doing sales forecasting with bases, and I guess I'm a nerd. I love looking at this going, ooh, this is interesting because a lot of times when you're doing forecasts, one of the first things you have to do is cut it in half at least, if not, cut it in half again, because there's this belief that whoever's buying, it's going to ramp up like this. And some of it's that trough of disillusion. And the other thing is that the adoption groups are very different. So what happens, in the US, for example, California is at about 3% of EV sales right now. And the East Coast is a lot lower than that. Usually a lot of new things start in the two coasts. And if you're forecasting based on that, you forget that there's a whole adoption and different set of needs in the middle parts of the US, as an example. So, they haven't, people that bought Teslas, that set of needs is very different as you move through, like the early majority and the later majority, in addition to having, of course, an infrastructure. So a lot of things there.
I think there's another thing, a part of this story, which is interesting. We mentioned a little while ago, or we talked about it either on a podcast or we wrote it, I can't remember, but we talked about how Tesla were discounting the price for EVs, significantly discounting. And that could turn out to be a masterstroke, because if you think of what's happening in the EV market now, a lot of the old school manufacturers, the legacy manufacturers, are dialing back their investment into EV, into battery plants. GM and Honda were going to produce a cheaper, more accessible EV car. That's been shelved, not abandoned, just pushed back a little bit. Volkswagen, similarly, not investing as quickly as they were. And as the market has started to show these signs of the initial enthusiasm tailing off, and the price value equation working more in Tesla's favor with the price drops, they've maybe persuaded others to step back. It's no longer the 22% margin business that they've got, and they've got legacy products to sell as well. It could just turn out to be a masterstroke of active pricing, of knowing the precise moment as you get the early adopters got the curve. When do you lose that early adopter premium and start to price more in line with what you might consider to be typical market forces? So that's another aspect to this, that it's maybe the dropping margins that have also discouraged investment, which is slowing the supply side. Notwithstanding that demand is faltering a little bit, but it ensures that Tesla have a fairly healthy chunk of what the pie is, even if it's not growing as quickly.
Yeah, the prices are down 30% since last year, and Tesla is probably the biggest portion of that. But there is a lot of government subsidies in there too. But 30% off of that. I like what you said. I wonder what that magic price point is then to unlock it more.
Yeah, when it starts to move forward. And I think that's the other thing about, as I see EVs, and I confess if it's not blindingly obvious, I'm no expert, but a lot of EV products tend to be premium. I haven't seen much in the way of a really cheap utilitarian sort of EV car. And that to me would seem to be the logical next step. Now, maybe it's technically not feasible. The weight of batteries mean you've got to have a substantially sized car. But where is the Prius, of course, is a hybrid, I think. But where's that market? Because Teslas are still pretty premium, right? You're not going to get an EV car for much change out of 50 grand, I shouldn't think. I don't know what you got. I mean, you tell me, but I just think it's not, for some reason, they've not yet broadened the spectrum of value products all the way through to premium. It seems to still be caught in this premium mindset, and that surprised me.
Yeah, they need more development there, and I know that that's on Elon Musk's agenda. As you said earlier, just gotten pushed back, and there probably are, knowing his mindset. Who knows his mindset?
So, yeah, you do.
Tell us,
predicting, where his looking at the way he talks, and I'm sure that he wants to be able to make an EV for the masses. I mean, he's been talking about it for a while. I think that's definitely on the agenda.
Yeah.
I think the thing I want to say about all of this is, what can our B2B clients learn from this? And I think it's just, as it relates to, how fast do you invest in new innovations, things that are changing, significantly changing your industry, how fast you jump on the bandwagon. And we've talked about a couple of tools that I think are really important here. One is the Gartner Hype Cycle. And whatever technology is changing your industry, I'd have a really good look at that hype cycle and see where it's at. Has it gone through this trough of disillusionment yet? It seems like that's almost like a necessary aspect for most innovations. And that's where a lot of early adopters get left holding the bag, right? Waiting for the growth that doesn't happen for a while. We also talked about, we didn't call it out specifically, but Jeffrey Moore's, crossing the chasm. Is it Chasm or Chasm, Sean? Chasm?
Chasm is what I would say.
Chasm. Crossing the chasm is just really something that, again, anytime you're bringing an innovation to market, you need to look at that and realize that what it took to sell on the coast, as Mary talked about, is not necessarily what it's going to take to sell in the middle of the country, of the United States of America, or just generally in markets to the early majority or the late majority, whatever. That's another thing. I think the third thing that I want to say, I think I learned from all of this is you got to really think about your distribution channel in your marketing plan, and really think and apply strategic marketing principles to how do you get the equivalent of Tesla's distribution channel, the enablers, the charging stations. How do you get them on board in a significant way, enough to build confidence in the rest of the value chain, that they're going to be able to take advantage of the new innovation. And a lot of times, I think we find that the ultimate buyer is where people spend a lot of time on, but they don't think as much about applying a marketing plan and some of the segmentation, targeting, and positioning principles against the distribution channel. And I think that's a lesson from this as well. What do you guys think?
I think that I like that comment about that distribution channel, but I think that the tool that really helps unlock that, and when we have worked with companies that are really establishing something revolutionary, is the influencer map. Right now the EV companies have to be working with the governments and the gas stations, and that's where I think, Tom, you often say, what is it that you should, how much responsibility should you have for things that you are out of your control? Well, these things are out of your control, quote unquote, but you've got to make the map work, the influencer map work. So if the government is the big bubble for a while, you need to put your resources against that to get that moving. And the oil companies, help the gas stations start to convert over if that's that's a point. So it is, you can't sell your product until you really take advantage. You have to work on all the issues within the bigger market as well. It's a heavy lift for new companies introducing stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sean, any closing thoughts?
No, well, it's inevitable that EVs are going to be 100% of the market at some point, unless a new technology comes along like fuel cells. So it'll be interesting to follow this, because it's not a question of this is not a product that can fail. There's no way back. There's only other ways forward in terms of not burning fossil fuels to move us around the planet. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. Maybe a topic we'll revisit a few times.
Yeah, there'll be a lot there. Thank you for joining us. And we hope that, if you're doing something big, that some of the points that we're seeing and that you probably are seeing yourself with the EV market or even the AI market, any new thing that's coming out, what's it going to take to unlock it and be successful? Thank you.
Thank you.